Differentiated instruction. What is differentiated instruction? It's common sense. It is catering to a classroom of people that learn in all different ways. There are three different aspects of that we should be able to look at and to differentiate. That would be the content, the process. Another way of looking at process would be the way in which we teach. Also, product, which can include assessments. We also need to make sure that we are including the students, because this is basically student-based, okay? So we need to make sure that we are keeping them interested, engaged, that we are helping them to learn in the way that is best for them. And how do we differentiate instruction? Through the content, through the process, and through the product. It is important to continually evaluate and to continually assess these students. It is important to be flexible. Okay, I think of differentiated instruction as grouping kids together. I mean, really, not always. We're not always grouping them by their level necessarily, but just grouping them, making smaller, more manageable groups. You have your whole group, and then you have your small group. Differentiated content includes a variety of things. I think scaffolding comes to mind, and I think that it's something that we use more than we realize. It is having students that have a better grasp on something, help other students that don't have a huge grasp on something. And really, when I look at it, and when I'm telling someone and when I'm teaching someone to do something, I'm going to tell them how to do it, but I want them to tell me back, because that kind of instills that they really have that material ingrained in them. And I feel like scaffolding kind of does that, because if you can teach something, then you need to have a decent grasp upon it. We can also differentiate instruction, or content can be your presentation style. People present things in different ways, so there's a lot of things that go into it, but basically it's all, let's say, different. Root word. Differentiated process. That means we're going to have tiered activities. So you might have a higher level group do something that's a little bit more challenging than a lower level, but it's all going to be within the same curriculum. And you can have graphic organizers, and graphic organizers are also in math, which I think that we sometimes forget. So, but I think that kind of helps give them a visual of what they're doing, and kind of helps them to help it sink in. You have your learning centers. We all know about learning centers. And there's just all sorts of different things in your process that you're going to include. All of them, eventually. You will probably try to include as many as possible. Differentiated product. We're going to do our tiered, like the levels. The levels. Also, tic-tac-toe. Okay, when we think of tic-tac-toe, we think of X's and O's. But tic-tac-toe, in reference to differentiated product, is kind of in that way, but it's actually breaking things up more to where it gives the students more of a choice of what they're doing. Sparks their interest because they feel like they have a choice. So it, gives them more to do. Learning menus. and whatnot. We're also going to make sure that we evaluate and grade their performance. When we evaluate, we're going to have an established way of how we are going to evaluate them, which is important. And we kind of need to make sure that we are letting them know about how they will be evaluated, and let them understand, like, rubrics. Not everyone understands what a rubric is. My son, who's in the 6th grade, recently looked at a rubric. He says, "Mother, I don't understand this. What is this?" I said, "Aiden, it's just your rubric. That's how you will be graded upon this assignment." He said, "Oh." He had no clue what it was for. So, really, it might be important to kind of implement that earlier, and let them know. You can do self-assessments. Hey, how do you think you're doing? Sometimes people will be like, "Oh yeah, I'm doing great," but also it kind of helps them to actually look at themselves and to be more responsible. And we're also going to grade upon the individual student, and how they are actually grasping it, their achievement, their growth. We're not going to care about how their peers are doing, because one's peers has nothing to do with one's own performance. Johnny could be doing worse than Mary, and vice versa. And we all have our strengths, and we all have our weaknesses, and we shouldn't be compared to each other. It just makes the classroom, harder to go upon. So never use a bell curve. How do students prepare, or how do teachers prepare their students in their classrooms for differentiated instruction? Well, I think communication is key. Communication, organization, behavior management, which is classroom management. Really, I think we just need to inform our students of what we're doing. With the classroom organization, I think classroom organization is extremely important, because it's going to be involved, like, where our stations are. So we're going to make sure that we have our floor space. So in our floor space, how our desks are. Make sure that there's ease of access. Make sure that the teacher's desk is not right there in the middle and in the way. Make sure that things are properly labeled. There's a place for groups, maybe a U table. So organizing your material, making sure that it's not in the way, making sure that it is easily accessible, making sure that it is properly labeled. As long, with your bulletin boards, make sure that your room isn't just so busy that students lose focus. So really, everything really comes into key. A student loses focus, they're gone. They're not gone, but it can become a struggle to regain their attention. Effective behavior management. This needs to be established at the very, very beginning. We need to know, it needs to be rules. You need to know what the consequences are. You need to know what the procedures are for doing certain things. Where do I turn in my homework? Where do I get this? What happens when we transition? Really, and that's why communication is key. We have to be aware of what is acceptable, because having an organized classroom really kind of helps give the student more structure in order to, make learning easier. What does differentiated instruction look like in the classroom? I think it looks different for every classroom. No one person is the same, but it definitely includes working in groups. And when we implement it, we need to make sure that we are starting small and simple, just like when you walk. When you learn to walk, you stumble, okay? It's small steps. And eventually, you learn to run. When you learn to read, it's, I know my ABCs. I recognize those letters. And eventually, you recognize the words. So if it can be very anxiety inducing when we're looking at how do we do this? What does it look like? And so, just like with everything, baby steps. Start simple. Start with one subject. Start with little groups in this. Maybe small prep activities that because really, eventually, you're going to have to prepare activities for different groups and different subjects for everything. So it's really important to start small and to, once you get, the more you get a grasp of it, to continue. These are not examples. Delivering instruction primarily by lecture, that is not a good example of differentiated instruction, because that is one way of delivering information, just one. And not everyone learns primarily by listening. We need to add stuff to it. We cannot base a child's, at the beginning of the year, we can't just put them in a group. Oh, this is how you did last year. That's how you're going to be. That's the group you're going to be within. And we cannot give class points for participation. How can we improve on this? Well, we can give students other ways. If lecturing is your strong point, that's great. You should also consider implementing other things within that. Perhaps giving some pictures, letting the kids read something, giving them objects to touch. Really, we have to try to implement more than one thing within that, because people learn in different ways. If you want to start the year off with grouping kids from their previous year's assessment, that could be a way to start, but then we need to remember to be flexible. And you're going to be assessing these kids throughout. You could just start on this current year's. If you want to start from the previous years, that's a starting point. But within a week or two, you're going to have assessed those children again to see what level they are on, to see what group they actually belong in. And as far as classroom participation, yeah, I think that giving bonus points for classroom participation is great. However, we really need to make sure that we are not giving them bonus points to say that they have comprehended the material in which it is over. That should be something completely different. You give them bonus points for participation, like within a reward. You get a reward. These points go towards a reward for something else, not towards their actual grade. Some students aren't comfortable speaking out, and so therefore, really, it's not really great, I don't think, to make them participate. If they're not comfortable, that's making them step out of their comfort zone, and it can impede their learning, because they will shut down. So I think that concludes my presentation. And you guys, thank you, and have a great day.